Hello.
Michael, is it recording?
Yes.
Are you
All
sure,
right.
Michael? It's
So,
recording?
welcome to our third Scarlet Letter discussion, because the first one didn't save right, Michael's fault, and the second one that we just had, Michael did not hit the record button.
Michael's
So,
fault!
we just had a lovely 15-minute discussion, and we're going to try to replicate it again.
Well,
So-
replicate it again for the second time.
Yes, so triple replicate it. Hopefully we won't miss anything.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully this records.
Miss Henderson, I hope you appreciate the lengths that we've gone to.
I hate Michael. Okay, so...
Okay. So, about 15 minutes ago, we started out by talking about the opening of the movie. And, you know, in the opening of the movie, right away, you see the Indians in nature, running through the forest, running past a waterfall, and you get this sense that all of a sudden, nature and Indians are playing a huge role, whereas they played almost no role.
Totally
And-
absent from the book.
Totally absent from
And-
the book.
They allow Hester to have this sort of relationship to them. Not directly to them, but you can kind of equate them.
And you have the Indians set up almost as the good guy right away because they have this community with nature and they're running through the woods, and you sort of see that there's, you know, if there's going to be animosity, maybe the colonists are going to be at fault. You get that sense at the beginning.
Yeah. And speaking of the good guys, I feel like one of the major reasons that the movie does not stay true to the book is because they make Dimmesdale out to be this, you know, perfect man, always like the desirable one, who just, you know, the heartthrob essentially,
Right.
which is not what he is in the book. He's a troubled man in the book,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
he always, you know, has his hand over his heart, and you can physically see his sin starting to eat away at him. But in the book and in the movie, he just looks the same, if not better, because he's slowly getting what he wants from Esther.
Well, I think in our past two discussions, we've kind of worked through the novel. Worked through the movie chronologically. But what if in our third attempt we try to
Crazy?
look at each character?
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
why don't we just talk about Dimmesdale for a second?
All right.
Okay. So we see Dimmesdale. Obviously, we focus on him for an hour, and we see him in ways that you don't see him in the novel. Because
Yeah,
the
there's
first
a
hour
whole new
doesn't focus-
backstory in the movie that was not in the book.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I kept thinking about him as Sirius Black the whole time, so...
Well, I mean, that's
Well.
just because he played Sirius
I know,
Black.
I know.
That's your
Well, that
fault.
altered my perception.
That's your fault.
So I liked what you said about the fact that he doesn't transform at all in the movie.
Yeah, he stays the same.
Right. So in the book, you see that the act of adultery is slowly eating away at his soul, and he can't stand it, and it's making him sick, and people are starting to notice that there's something wrong with him. But in the movie, you know, I think he stays pretty much healthy throughout it. Don't you?
Yeah, like I said, he even looks healthier at the end because he's slowly getting Hester away from
Yeah.
Chillingworth, and
Right.
he knows he's getting what he wants.
And I mean, that sort of goes with how Dimmesdale in the book has a lot of self-growth, and he goes through this, you know, transformation, and Hawthorne really dwells a lot on what he's thinking. He spends, like, whole chapters talking about what Dimmesdale is thinking, but in the movie, there's none of that. Dimmesdale, I mean, his perceptions and his values and beliefs are the same at the end as they are at the beginning. He's just sort of, and the actions that he does in the movie sort of validate those initial.
Yeah, and I mean, and with Dimmesdale, like we said, he doesn't really change. There's really a brief period where Hester's in jail and he's feeling guilty, and he looks
Right.
out and he's staying away with her, looking for her handkerchief every day. So there's that, and that shows how he's committed and how it upsets him, but it's not near any degree that the book shows of his sin.
Yeah, and he's not really, I feel like he's not that guilty because, you know, he feels like he's sinned or anything, but just because he's in love with Hester and Hester's in there. And
Right.
in the book, you have this, Dimmesdale dwells extensively on his sins and his own actions, but you don't have this sense that he has this undying love for Hester that
No.
continues to
Yeah, it's like his
Or even for
defining
Pearl.
characteristic in the movie, whereas his defining characteristic in the book is that he's a preacher that's sinned. Like in the movie, it's so easy to forget that he's even a religious man.
Right. Yeah.
Like the only time you see him in the church giving that one speech, but he had just come from his little horse riding escapade in the woods, so you don't even really think of him as like any sort of authority figure.
Mhm.
Because the people in the book are looking up to Dimmesdale, which is why Dimmesdale feels so bad that he sinned in the first place. And I mean, of course, the society in the movie likes him as well, but there's no
There's no reverence.
he doesn't
for
he
him.
does, yeah he doesn't feel like he owes anything to them.
No.
No. And you see that in the very end, where he goes up to the what is it called?
The scaffold.
The scaffold. He goes up to the scaffold and he makes the whole speech to the crowd about how they shouldn't hang Hester, they should hang him because he's the father. And
they're just like, okay.
It totally misses the point that
Yeah,
you saw in the book.
30-second shift of, oh, he's our minister? Okay, let's kill him.
Right.
In the book, there's that, like, profound moment of confusion where no one's really understanding what's happening, and then once they figure out what he says, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to perceive it. And there's certainly no one who's, let's kill our minister.
Right. And in the book, it's the climax of the novel, because he's in the forest with Hester. He realizes all of a sudden that he's been dwelling on this, for years now, and he's been slowly killing himself over it, and now he realizes that he doesn't have to. And in the movie, that just doesn't exist at all.
Plus, I mean, there's not really that much of a time lapse in the movie anyway.
No, there really
Pearl's
isn't.
only like a toddler when it ends.
Right, and Pearl is supposed to be 7.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the book, when he makes that whole speech, you see the crowd, the villagers really contemplate what he says after, and they put a lot of thought into it rather than just being like, let's hang him. And that sort of shows how, ultimately, although sin is sort of rejected, but it's eventually accepted at the end, and people sort of are able to wrap their heads around it. Whereas in the book, you don't get that. You have, like, they still think he sinned, and he thinks he doesn't sin, and nothing changed. Like, there's no reconciliation between him and the people.
Especially because he doesn't die, and then he runs away with Hester and Pearl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he just gets what he wants.
I mean,
And
all
he
the
rides off into
characters,
sunset.
in the book have this sort of commitment that they're going to stay in this place and, like, deal with their personal problems and not run away from them, and you don't get that in the movie.
Okay, let's briefly talk about how Pearl's treated in the movie,
Okay.
because I think that she's a reason that Dimmesdale is so different in the movie,
Mhm.
because Pearl narrates the movie,
Right.
And since she narrates it, that the movie lacks that objective point of view that Hawthorne gives in the book. So, she's talking about my mother, my father, and she's probably not going to depict them in anything other than the
positive
heroes
light.
of the
Right.
story, and also that's her as a narrator. That's the only time you get Pearl in the movie, really. I mean, in the book, she's such a force of nature, and she's a character. She has a lot to say. She makes a lot of the story important, but by not aging her, she can't even speak by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and she doesn't. I mean, she contributes to the fact that the movie is really a romance, whereas the book is a discussion of really important themes. And
Yeah,
she
Pearl's like
makes
an
it into a
object.
romance because she wants
She's
the
an
story of her
unreliable
parents to-
narrator.
Yeah, you're right.
And she's trying to. She tells half the story the first hour. Like she specifically says, "I was still in my mother's womb," when this was happening.
So obviously they're like stories that Hester told her,
Yeah,
things. So you can't even trust
No.
that what happened was so perfect.
yeah. And I mean,
Not that
even the
everything-
way at the beginning when she starts narrating, when she says "my mother, my father," you get this sense that Hester and Dimmesdale are eventually going to end up together, and so that sets it up right from the beginning as a romance and lets you know what the outcome is going to be. Whereas there's a lot of suspense in the book about what the outcome is going to be.
And I think in the book, Pearl contributes to a lot of the interpretations of the A.
Yeah, the A has so many different perceptions. It's a sign in the book,
Right.
whereas it's just a symbol of one thing, of
Mhm.
sin in the movie.
You see, in the book, you see the A, decorated in seaweed. You see the A in the sky. You see the A meaning, adulteress. But then you also see Hester at the very end turning the A into Abel.
Yeah.
And in the movie, the A,
And you see the changing perception of the townspeople towards the A, like how they say, oh, Hester is so good, and, this A used to be shameful, but now it's sort of her sign of.
Yeah, they don't even
how
really
she is.
mind it so much anymore. Plus, like shifting into talking about Hester, the A in the book, it sort of acts as like a business card almost. It shows
right.
her
It's
profession of
yeah.
embroidery, and that is totally absent from the movie, and it totally takes away so much of her independence and just what sets her apart from other women of the time.
Yeah.
She owns it in the novel, basically.
Yeah.
She takes it away from the villagers, and she says, "Oh, you can't define me by the A."
Yeah,
Whereas in the movie,
you see like Hester's looks, the way she just knows that
right, the
she's
movie
letting
strips her of
people-
her
Yeah, she's letting
individuality.
people define her.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that we talked about in our last discussion is that in the movie
Sorry,
they
our
really
first class discussion or the one we just had?
no, the one we just had.
Okay.
Yeah, the one that didn't
Just
record.
clearing that.
Anyway, so in the movie they really strive to make her this strong woman, and they're like, oh, Hester wants to do things different, and she's by herself, and she's so modern, yada yada yada. But then it actually, I think she appears less strong and less independent than in the book, because in the book she, there's this tremendous journey towards self-discovery and self-knowledge that she does alone, and in the movie it becomes just sort of a romance about her and Dimmesdale, and it's not really about Hester's own growth as a character.
There's just no growth
Yeah.
in the movie.
No growth
in
for
any
anyone.
basically.
Yeah. What about, well, do you want to talk about Mistress Hibbins?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so in the movie, you see that Mistress Hibbins and her little cohort of women is
Pretty big cohort. There's
Pretty
a
big
lot of
cohort, right.
a lot of sinful
A lot of
women
fallen
in that
women in
town.
that-
Yeah.
right. So you don't see really any powerful women in the movie, do you?
No. But I mean, you don't see that in the book either, but the
You
thing
don't,
is that it sort of takes away from the novelty of Hester's position. Like in the book, she's the only one like this, but in the movie, as soon as she's cast out, she finds this whole circle of other women, and they have their little like knitting club, and they just talk about how bad everybody else is, and that sort of it takes away from her being alone, which contributes to her
Yeah,
growth.
and plus in the book, like just the treatment of Mistress Hibbins herself, not even considering the whole gaggle of women that follow them. Like Mistress Hibbins, she's sort of this warning tale of all the witch anxieties that they had in the time, and she's different from Hester. Like the reader can see Hester's not like this woman, and they're different. But in the movie, they're like best friends.
The movie gets rid of all the subtleties of the book. I think
Yeah.
it's safe to say.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well-
Let's talk about the end of the movie.
The end of the movie.
Do you want to talk
Okay.
about Chillingworth first?
Well, okay. Let's have a brief discussion of Chillingworth.
Okay. Yeah, he doesn't really play as much of a part in the movie. I mean, he's the antagonist for 30 minutes.
Right. And I mean, the movie completely ruins the whole suspense that the novel had going on between Dimmesdale and Chillingworth because, in the novel, Hester doesn't reveal to Dimmesdale that Chillingworth is, by his side until the very end, right?
Yeah, she it eats away at her a little bit. She doesn't really
Yeah.
know how to deal with the situation.
Whereas in the movie, she's like, "Oh, Dimmesdale, I forgot."
Like 5 minutes
5
ago,
minutes
my
after-
husband came
yeah.
back in town, and he threatened me to not tell you, but I'm going to come tell you right now because I love you so much.
Yeah, and that takes away, I mean, that's one of the most tense relationships in the book, and it contributes to a lot of the suspense, and that's totally gone in the movie.
Yeah, it just takes less of the focus off of them so you can put it on the love story between Hester and Dimmesdale.
Yeah.
And there's no, you don't feel any sympathy towards Chillingworth in the
No.
movie at all. Like, in the book, you can understand that he would be angry that his wife, had a
He was
child
he
out
was
of
the
wedlock.
victim in the novel.
Yeah,
at
he was
first.
a victim. I mean, like, he was there and he was antagonizing Dimmesdale, which wasn't good. But,
In the
you
movie, right
you
from the
understood, you
beginning.
felt bad for him. He's just like this old man who,
Right.
got wronged. But in the movie, he's actually kind of an enjoyable character, I think, because he's so cunning. But
But he's the antagonist
he's
right away.
a straight antagonist. There's no question about it at all. Whereas in the book, you can kind of almost see Dimmesdale as a bit of antagonist because of his whole.
And then in the movie, to get into the ending, Chillingworth is basically the catalyst for the whole
yeah,
Indian fight scene.
totally not in the book at all.
Yeah.
And like we said, takes away from that whole
Right.
Dimmesdale's relationship with the crowd. Because Chillingworth, what happens is Chillingworth tries to kill Dimmesdale because he sees a rider coming out of Hester's house late one night, but it turns out it was just a creepy man. And so he killed the creepy man. He scalped him like an Indian because he sort of was connecting with his inner sinful side, which I guess they were saying as the Indians. And it unintentionally prompts this blame that gets set onto all of the Indians, and everyone just chaos breaks out in this town. And it's I don't know the point.
Well, I mean, the point is that they need some sort of final action scene because they completely, erased all of the plot from the novel.
And all of, like, the thematic importance, so all they
Right.
have left is to do this fight scene.
Right. And then finally you see Dimmesdale, Hester, and Pearl riding away into
Yeah,
the
just
sunset.
happily. Hester just kind of gives her daughter the A.
Just go with the A.
It really bothered
Which is
me.
kind of weird because, I mean, in the book, it wouldn't even be weird if she gave Pearl the A because the A is so
It was like a play
multifaceted
thing
and
for her
meaning,
almost.
yeah. But I mean, in the movie, the A has this set meaning of shame,
And she physically gives it to Pearl.
Right.
yeah.
She's like, here you go. For you. I thought Pearl was going to keep it.
I know,
but-
because Pearl was hanging on to it
Yeah,
for a
she was
while.
like playing with it, and but she did eventually drop it into the mud. So I guess there's that.
And I mean, you have that whole thing where she just leaves the Scarlet Letter behind, whereas in the book it stays with her for the rest of her life, but it changes in meaning, so it's okay. And she just sort of drops it in the movie.
Yeah, and it just shows how Hester really didn't understand the meaning of the A at all. Because in the book, she kind of accepts not society's perception of it, but her own perception of it, and she lets that change who she is. There's no denying that event like this is going to change who you are. But in the movie, she's just
She lets
determined
it
to
define her.
get back to whatever she was before.
So, movie completely misses the point.
Movie bad,
Book
book
good.
good,
Book good.
Michael bad.
I felt bad.
I hope
Irene
this
good.
recorded.
Hopefully. If not, next up we can review Easy A.
Yes.
I watched that the other weekend. It's great.
Okay.
Alright.
All right.
Thank you
so,
for watching.
Bye. Hopefully for the
Goodbye for the last time.
All right, kill Michael.